Hey everybody, welcome to another Divine Masculine Roundtable. Today we're going to be talking about principles of healing. We were just actually talking a little bit about that and kind of universal concepts on what and how those things work. At some point I want to do a guided meditation if everybody's up for that, and also kind of a group activity too. So tuning into the energy of the group is something that I do sometimes, and I want to share that with a group as well, if everybody's open for that.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah.
And then Seth will be joining us about halfway through, he said, so he'll be popping in a little bit later.
Fantastic.
So yeah, was there anything that you wanted to continue sharing, Bradley, or you want to?
Let's just flow and see what happens, because it sort of moves, Otherwise, I'm kind of trying to pick up a thread of what I was saying, whereas I'm sure it will come. We'll come back to it. It will come through again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, actually, I wanna continue from what I was hearing. I mean, everyone was sharing. David, you were sharing about your dreams of your restaurants and building and how busy you are. Akana, you were doing exactly the same thing. My view and the way I was listening and perceiving it. A lot of the world that you reside in now is unrecognizable from the world that you left, in a way. And I'm not sure if your dreams are being realized. All your dreams are being realized. It sounds like that to me. Bradley, you were doing the same thing. Certainly what's happening to me is the same. It feels like a lot of the things that I've always been putting effort into creating is coming to me effortless now. And which is a bit of a shock. And Brendan, you and I had talked a little bit, and things are kind of moving for you as well. So what's going on? That's what I want to know. What's going on?
Things are moving. That's what's going on. I think it's like David said earlier, that we've waited our whole lives for this.
Yeah.
And this moment, this transition we're going through. And I know for me, like I feel something like right in front of me. It's like I can almost reach it. It's right there. Where I remember before at certain parts of my journey, I was moving through, I was doing the work, but it was like I couldn't even see the shore. I'm like, oh man, is the shore even there? I'm just gonna keep going. It's there. I have to feel it somewhere. There somewhere.
Mm.
But I couldn't see the shore. And I feel it's like right there at my fingertips now. Whatever I'm reaching for is inside. I know that. And there's this place that's this ready to burst open. And this place like this that I've touched before in very profound ways. And it's kind of floated in and out of my existence. And so I'm right there at my fingertips with that. So, but I think a lot of us.
If I can add, Brandon, but I was going to say, it's not only that we waited all our lives, I think we've all trained for this all our lives.
Mm.
We've got the football playoffs going on in America right now. And, it's week 18 or 19 for these teams. They've been training and they've been practicing for this for all year. We've been practicing this for lifetimes. And now it's our time. So clearly, the fact that all of us in one way or the other are expressing that our dreams are coming true effortlessly is, I believe, Spirit's way of working through us, saying, good job, Jesus. Good job, Brandon. Way to go, Akana. Nice job, Bradley. You're on the right path. Keep up the good work. There's still obviously hurdles and bumps in the road along the way, but now we've got tools that we can glide over those bumps effortlessly or gracefully, where other times it could have derailed us completely. And that's kind of how I'm feeling about this. That's what I'm saying.
Me too. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to kind of stitch it together to what we're talking about earlier, as this materializes, as this yearning for what we've yearned for, there's this, for me anyways, this greater healing that's happening, in that the journey up to now, it seems well worth it, and not even considering what's happened before. So for me, this past week, a week and a half, 2 weeks, feels like all the the difficulties, the challenges, they're all being stitched together in this tapestry that's being erased in a way. That's the best way I can describe it. It's my best effort in stitching it together to the healing, Brandon. So you go from there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, healing itself is something that I've been thinking about for a very long time. The principles of energy healing. I think I started that journey. Well, I've had glimpses of it, but probably about 15 years ago, maybe now. So that's when I really started looking into it, and had my first experience of it at this Universal Life Church. And then I had experience with my mom, where I had this profound healing occur with her when I was in Iraq. It was my first experience of distance healing, where I had this hologram pop up in front of me. And since then, I was looking into, like, what makes this work? And I was looking into it for a little bit different reasons back then. Back then, it was strange shit is happening that I can't explain, and conventional science can't explain it either. So let me look in this quantum area over here and try to get some answers that make sense. And then so I found some answers there, and then I wanted to look into other people. Well, I experienced it this way. How does it work for this other person? What are the principles over here? And I studied like over 30 different modalities, and I found this thread that exists in each one of them that kind of unites the principles together. And you can look and dive into that. And there's concepts and stuff that I've been looking at along the way, and manifestation. How does manifestation and healing coincide, and how do those work together? And one of the things I was looking at, and like you can look at the quantum principle of how you can observe a particle and its behavior acts according to the intentions of the observer, the expectations of the observer. Is it a particle or a wave, right? Or is it both? Now they can do it where it's both. So if that occurs on the quantum level, and then quantum physicists kind of scoff at people who say it scales up to the macro, but there's absolutely a macro level when you start looking into and start playing around with manifestation itself. You start honing your intentions, and you see these things happening around your life. And you can look at the Big Bang, where we all started. In that concept, we all started from the same particle. We all started from the same spot and expanded out through the universe. And we expanded out in a flash of light. When the creator said, "Let there be light," going into the principles and the concepts of God, and looking at that, where God is all-knowing, it's infinite, it's everywhere, it's a part of everybody. Love is inherent. It's the beginning and the end. And the emanation of perfection is kind of contained with the concept of God or source. So part of my thinking and my inquiry is like, how do we use these principles? How do we recognize the principles inherent within to facilitate the healing within our own lives? And sometimes something I've been looking at very particularly lately is manifestation itself, and how everything about us, everything that we think, everything that we believe, everything that we feel, everything that's like strongly imprinted within us, whether it be a genetic transfer or what have you, it's manifest in some way in our life. It's manifest in some way in the reality around us. And you looking at like different little concepts and beliefs and how they affect the energy that you hold, and looking at people who are attempting to do a healing on themselves or another, and they don't have really the alignment to the healing, and so they try it, but it doesn't work. And why is that? And then there's other people who do certain modalities and say, well, the energy itself, you don't have to have a belief. It works either way. And why is that? And then there's principles where, like, you can look in the Bible and it talks about faith. Through your faith, you are healed. Well, why is that? And I was looking at that, and you can break that down to an instruction that's inherent, an imprint that's inherent in the energy itself. So when it works either way, for instance, with Reiki, you don't have to have a belief in it. It works either way. The energy instructed into that reality blueprint of that energy is it works no matter what. You feel it. It's an energy. Where you look at the other types of healing where it's the faith-based healing, it's the person's alignment with their own intentions. It's the person's alignment with the outcome. And if they are dedicated to the alignment, whether it be the appearance of the outside or the realization of the inside, that alignment is what promotes the healing. But everything you can look at is kind of like an instruction, a blueprint, a ones and zeros programmed into the energy itself, right? So is this type of instruction present or is this type of instruction present? When you look at like people who have difficulties healing through or carrying something, like what type of energy are they programmed within themselves? Is it a soul imprint? Is it instruction coming from there? So how do we use all of that knowledge in order to facilitate the change that we want? And then there's that infinite power and intelligence of Creator itself, right? That which we came from. What is out of bounds of that? Is there anything that cannot be touched by that? And in my own personal experience, through all the miracles and the metaphysical experiences I've had, the paranormal experiences, that tells me that there's nothing out of the realms of possibilities. Which is why I like listening to these these yogic masters talk about their Siddhic experiences, and because I can feel the resonance of that, I can feel the truth of that, I can feel the Creator within them manifest through them. It allows their alignment with that to manifest outside in some seemingly miracle. But when you are completely aligned with Creator, that becomes the normal, because you are at one with everything. So you're using the laws and the principles of creation itself and the form that you're manifest in to shift outside of you, shift things outside of you. And that's how you can look at the energy being pliable. And some of those monks have put their hand into rocks and pushed their hand into rocks like putty. So how are these things possible? And how do we utilize them from where we are in order to create the experience that we want, the healing that we want? Anybody have any thing they want to chime in on their own approach to healing?
Yeah, I'll throw in for a moment. Yeah, it's just, I guess it's interesting to me, the concept of healing means something's broken, or something needs to be fixed, needs to be patched. And it feels like inherently we're beginning from a space of wanting to create something by creating a problem and then feeling like it needs to be fixed. Forgetting our divinity and the perfection of what we are and who we are and of everything. And I guess for me, it's more like I can look at my last part of this journey and say, oh man, fuck. Or I think there's a space, because it's just a perception. Everything's based in my experience. It's just based on a perception. So when we have a construct in which we're curious and understanding that everything is divine and the perfection of what everything is then we start to understand, I think, from a different perspective, well, if this is perfect, suddenly it feels like the energy changes. Like, what if all that stuff that we thought was uncomfortable or problems or loss or whatever the story is, and I'm being challenged with this right now, this new construct and this idea of like, well, what if it's perfect, and what if it's all like, I think the thing that's come through the most lately is like, what if we're just writing the greatest love story for ourselves, and the only discord that seems to happen in the world that I do, the medical work that I do, is when there's a lack of, like, blood is the expression of love from the heart within the physiology of the anatomy of the body. So when we stop loving, it shows up in the external and internal map of who and what we are. So our body speaks to us. And we start to hear it, and we start to see there's a story there. There's a constellation of creation that is formed both internally and externally. We get to facilitate and play with it externally as we start to facilitate and live our lives. And then the construct of this, I guess, when I work with what people call disease or these other ideas, and I honor that completely, we found that disease is there to remind people to live again. It's to inspire life. It's to feel, which is what we're designed to do more than anything else. So when we start to feel, because the root of every single thing that we have in discord with our physiology is emotional, it's DNA, it's love. When we forget the perfection and the divinity of something, it starts to cut off blood, and then it starts to cause things in our system to help us remember or feel or experience something, a new paradigm, a new construct of thought or emotion or potential. And when we start to dive in, I think, to those spaces, we forgot how much we could feel and how safe it was to feel. And, classic, feel to heal. So if we're starting with the idea that something is broken, then I feel like it's an endless thing to try and fix until we find something else that's broken. There's something else that needs to be healed or shifted. And I honor that. Like, healing is a very beautiful, powerful word. I think for me, healing is the idea of nourishment. I remember as I was going through a fast, I did a 28-day fast, and I could barely walk, I could barely talk. I was passing out. I was like, what am I doing to myself? And it was eating away the stories inside of my body that I was holding on to, like literally, that were trapped in my physiology. And so I went in the shower. I just would lay down on this box-like shower and just sit there under the water, wanting to be nourished and held by something. And there was nothing there but me. And I realized my hands were what that was, along with the water and the ground below me. And as my hands grabbed the soap, I would just, because I could barely move anyway, I just started to see my body in a new way and started to see I had a body. And it's also an expression of divine. And as I was washing it, I was just crying at like how I've treated it, how I've used it, how I've forgotten it, really. And the extraordinary potential and beauty of what the human anatomy is. And when our body talks to us in that way, it just wants to, it's like our inner child that's saying, hey, don't forget, don't you want to live again? Don't you want to thrive? Don't you want to go on an adventure? And I think what happens, at least in my work in my office, is that when we specialize in finding the root of anything and then flipping the root. And what I find is that often we'll see a miracle come through really quick. And this is life. It's just a metaphor for life. That's all it is. And creation, when we flip that into flow, and we start to allow that energy to move, I see my clients either begin their healing adventure or they see the miracle, or both. Like if the discord was with an estranged son for 26 years and we flip that energy and we find the root of it, it's like, go, gone. Next day we get a text message. And that completely changes their life. That completely changes their anatomy, their energy, their flow. Everything in their whole life just flipped in a moment when they get a message. And we never know what or how those things can happen, but when we allow ourselves to feel and hear those messages. And as I sit in my own discord, as all my stories are coming up where I'm at right now, a lot are playing with me and being like, you're going to run, you're going to react, and that's okay too. But I'm just like, as I just allow myself to feel it, I feel like then I can start to hear what wants to be inspired for creation. As I get more curious to be like, why are you out of money? Why are you out of food? And not saying, oh, this is terrible, but saying like, what are you trying to show me that I've forgotten so I can remember? So I guess that's my take on healing in a sense. And I honor that healing construct. But for me, it's around nourishment, remembrance, and then adoration of that and sharing it.
Thank you. That was beautiful and perfect. And that actually brings up another point that I want to go over that I was meaning to mention. Healing for me, it's not fixing what's wrong. And I use the concepts of that I was mentioning previously in the approach to quote unquote healing. For me, I look at healing as a remembering of the wholeness. And so I look at and approach healing the same way that masters talk about enlightenment. And enlightenment is something that is already there, that we have to remember, that we have to realize. It's not an action or a doing. It's a place that we exist within, that we remember that's there. And the remembering is the letting go of the layers of distortions, the layers of illusions, the layers of concepts that are false or that have separated us from our greater selves in some way. And so when I approach that, I look at it the same way by going in. And when I tune into people with certain kinds of illness, there's often these emotions and belief systems wrapped up in there. And sometimes they're in this tight little ball that I can feel somewhere in the body, like cancer, for instance. And when I move into that, I move in with that God source, and I tap into that place, and I can feel those layers of that distortion. And I start to speak out loud what these are as we release them. And the releasing those false concepts and ideas, of course, the other person has to be in with that. If they're resisting, there's no amount of things I can do to do that for them. So when I feel the resistance, we talk about the resistance. We move into that. And as we go into that, I allow their higher self to move into it too, as I'm moving that God source in with me. And it just kind of has this unwinding effect. And we move in closer until we get to that pure source essence that's there. And then talking about what does that pure source essence, how would that re-instruct that area that's been distorted? And so we bring that concept in there. And so part of that is like the perfection that exists within the God mind. When you allow that perfection into yourself, it will re-instruct the moment. And it doesn't mean that everything has to be changed. Sometimes the perfection is realizing the acceptance of the circumstance and just seeing the perfection of the circumstance itself. And sometimes the perfection is actually shifting the whole experience, because whatever you're holding on to in that distortion was causing it to be something other than it could be. And everything's okay. It's not to say that everything is wrong, because this is part of our journey. Part of the journey is learning our mastery, learning our self-mastery, and how to create what we want within ourselves and our world. So to be at the helms of our experience, not at the throes of life. So we move towards that and become the conscious creator. And this is how, because we look at within ourselves those things that we're holding on to, and where did that create this for me? So somebody that might have been born with a deformity, for instance, perhaps there's a way for them, if that was their journey, to master matter itself in order for them to move to a point where they change their physical appearance. But perhaps their journey is more about self-acceptance and accepting the perfection of their form just as it is. And in that form, they create a new type of vibrance by accepting the wholeness of themselves as they are. So we can't say that anybody's experience for one is right for another, because we have to tune into that source of self and what does that want to express through. And so we have to let go of our concepts of what is right or wrong. We have to let go of our concepts and assumptions of everything we've been holding about the story, to let the story be recreated in its authentic wholeness. And from that, we get that middle path and that place of peace, that place of everything is okay, that place of not trying to be anything different than it is, because you're accepting the fullness of what wants to come through. And the distortions are holding on to those things that is preventing the fullness. And that's why we feel that constriction in those certain areas, those constriction in those moments of life that you're resisting and you're bumping up against, and that constriction when nothing seems to go your way in certain moments, or that constriction in like that illness that you just can't seem to get past. illness that you can't seem to get healed, because no matter what you try in the allopathic world seems to work. So you go back within and say, what am I holding on to here that needs to be re-seen in a different way, so that I can re-experience my own life in the fullness that I wish to.
I'll both elegantly. That I'm a loss for words, actually. Kana, that was well put and really beautiful, and Brendan, incredible. I agree with all of it. For me, healing begins with the acknowledgement, as I'm just repeating myself to what you guys said, is that everything is perfect. The imperfect is perfect. It's the starting point of the lesson. And healing also for me starts with understanding to what degree I'm disconnected from source, disconnected from myself. I find it curious when I'm observing kids in their natural habitat, when they're playing together, in their brilliance and in their innocence, and observing, a retirement home of sorts, and those two energies and the way they operate. And it's staggering in the way that they're connected to source in that way. I mean, I remember my experiences as a little boy really not being of this world and being connected to a different world altogether in retrospect, in the way that I'm perceiving it. And as I matured, I became of this world completely disconnected. And the more disconnected I became, I started having challenges with my health, challenges with whatever that is, right? And only when I started to understand, witness it, allow it to be, and connect back into myself, then the healing had overcome myself. So that's what healing means to me. I mean, these are small cases from my personal experiences, but they are truisms for me, and that is the level of connection you are to source. And the more disconnected you are, it's commensurate with your ailment, whatever that ailment may be.
Well said, Jesus. Can I add to that?
Please do, David.
I listened to Kana and Brandon talk about remembering, and you talking about disconnected and then reconnecting. And the way I see healing is similar in that there's a part of us that, especially when we're born, is whole and complete, and like you say, innocent. And as time passes and experiences occur, embarrassing or shameful or painful or traumatic issues happen, and it might be a part of ourselves that wants to express that can't, and or won't, or doesn't have the tool, and that becomes a part of ourself that becomes dismembered or disowned. And so the healing happens or occurs when we can find that dismembered place and remember it. And so the remembering to me is a little bit different. The same word is used, but the conditions around it are slightly different, in that I'm remembering a part of myself that I had been disowned or disenfranchised from, and bringing myself back into wholeness, either for myself or assisting another for that experience to occur. And so that experience of remembering, to me, is more of taking a disowned part of the self and bringing it back into wholeness and completeness. And that, to me, is, in a nutshell, the process of healing.
I'm going to jump in, if that's okay. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I love the word remembering when it comes to healing. I think when I started my journey, it was genuinely from a place of trying to tone like really dogmatic idea of I was a bad person who did all these bad things, and now I need to fix myself so that I can be a good person, you know. And the more I kind of went down that path, the more I came to that realization that of just actually remembering that there was never anything to fix, and that was a process of bringing those, I guess, integrating those different aspects of myself that just got lost along the way. In moments of life where I'd ingested more experience than I could digest, and these little parts of me getting lost, and parts of me that I didn't want to feel, and just learning to bring acceptance and love to those different parts, and then bring them home to the whole. And I guess that's kind of what everyone's saying in a different way, in a different language, and however they kind of perceive it. I actually, when Brandon first asked if we wanted to chip in, and there was this pause for all of us, and I wanted to say something, and like I noticed I felt this trigger, right? I can still feel it in my belly, and it was kind of like I wanted to say something, but then I kind of got a little bit nervous, and I got a little bit shy, and I got a little bit apprehensive, and like there was this part of me, what I'm saying, you know, there's obviously still these parts of me that are sort of playing that haven't been brought home to wholeness. This is the process. It's an endless process, but an aspect of myself that didn't feel good enough, and that really wanted to speak up and impress, but didn't feel able to do so. And then I kind of found myself come out of the present and come and I could feel something in my belly. And I always feel that, you know, these triggers they're here to guide us back to that remembrance, right? And that within each moment, the medicine is being shown to us. You know, life is always, you know, whatever we're going through, whatever darkness comes up, whatever triggers come up, whatever experience we're having, there's always the medicine. Like, we're always being guided back to how to return those aspects to ourselves to love. And I always find, like, especially in a group with guys like this, I always feel like the medicine is real bringing, sort of shining the light on the truth of what's really going on for me, in a way that's like, this is what I see. Like, these are the different parts of me, and I want to be seen by you guys. Like when I realize that there's nothing to hide, and I can just open up, and I can really be seen. I can hold myself, and I feel like I'm being held in that truth, in that light, and I'm letting that part of myself be seen and held. And then there's nothing to run from anymore. You know, that I can just be with that, breathe into it, I can allow it to move, and I can call that aspect of myself home. And then all of the fear that I was feeling, all of that apprehension, all of that nervousness kind of just subsides, and I can feel myself feeling really peaceful now. And it's like I'm in my heart. I've just realised I've locked my partner out. She's at the front door, so I'm going to leave you guys with that. I'll be back in a sec.
Well, I love what Bradley said, though, because that's the authenticity, and that's what I think more of us men need to do in being seen and being heard amongst each other. This laying down of arms, as it were, because that hasn't worked. We're all traumatized in some way from little boys onwards. And this pretense that we all carry as men continually traumatize not only ourselves, but everyone else. So I think what all of us need to do as men is allow everyone to be seen and heard, all men to be seen and heard, and women, but I'm in this men's circle, to allow men to be seen and heard in their experiences, and to validate those experiences, because that's the disconnect I feel.
Yeah,
Very true. Right on.
I think that authenticity is vitally important in order to return to your wholeness, return to your full expression of self. You need to be authentic and honest, and that's part of being in that present moment. Right? Part of that being in that present moment is recognizing what's going on within you and being willing to dive into that place, no matter what it is.
But why do you? I'm just like, this is a question for me. I see that, and there are men that walk away from that. I don't. I mean, I know why in my journey, specific periods of time in my journey, I walked away. I wasn't ready. I didn't have the courage to encounter it. I didn't have the fortitude, the discipline, whatever it will be, to carry that forward. To say, okay, I knew what was entailing to go through this. A lot of pain, a lot of strife, a lot of turmoil. I'd rather just sit back and do nothing and just kind of like, make it easy. That's what I chose at one point in time. But your heart or your being yearns for a greater expression. At least mine did. And that wasn't a choice anymore for me. And I question, at what point will, generally speaking, men will say, I need to express my highest self, because it has a much deeper and richer reward in going through whatever that needs to be going through individually.
You're a little bit choppy coming in and out, but I think we got the
Okay.
most idea of it.
Yeah, internet's a little unstable here, but thank you, Brendan.
No, I think you asked a really important question, Jesus. Why don't more men reach towards that? Why don't we reach out towards that? We know that it's the healthy direction to go. And I think in my case, there was two main things. One is I knew that there was pain. I knew that there was darkness there. But because by definition it was part of my disowned self, I didn't know what it was. And it was scary. And of course, there's all the patterning that we get from growing up in the societies that we do about masculine men act a certain way, and if you're not that way, then you're a sissy man or whatever, and go into that kind of thing, and that's part of it as well. But it was the really knowing that there was something that was needed, but not knowing what it was because it was just dark in there, I think is the main thing. And I'll tell you what, I knew for at least a decade that I needed some serious help and some serious work on reconnecting and remembering who I truly was. And I had been dipping my toe and kind of going through the motions in some very deep spiritual work, and not really doing much but scratching the surface. And it wasn't until the day my oldest daughter was born, and that shifted everything for me. And you guys that are fathers know what I'm talking about. That's the day that I said, I can't fuck around anymore. This is serious. And I know that a lot of my trauma was because my parents did the best they could and were very inadequate. And I refused to pass that on to my children. And I knew that this is the day of reckoning, and I'm not going to ignore it anymore, no matter how dark and how ugly it was. It wasn't nearly as dark and ugly as the thought of passing this on to my children. And so that was the impetus that I needed. And without that, I probably would have been still carrying a very, very thick mask and very, very wounded inside, pretending to be a completely together human being. So that's my story.
How?
I mean, I'm just going to jump in again. I still struggle a lot with reach, especially with other men. You know, I think every 2 weeks before these calls, I have reasons in my head why I'm not going to come on the call. Like, and I know it's good for me, you know. And I know once I'm on the call and I see you guys and I feel you all and I feel the love and we're talking about stuff that I really care about, I'm like, great. But there's still parts of me that want to run away from this stuff. And I've been doing it for a while, you know. And I've been on this journey of remembering who I am for a while, and it is easier. It is easier, but there's still so much resistance in me. And I just think for a lot of the men out there, average men, it's just too much. It's just not part of how we were raised to be. And we're undoing that. And, you know, by being on this call, that's what we're all doing. And yeah, there's a process. We're not just going to click our fingers and all of a sudden men are just bonding in a deep, heartfelt, open, authentic way. We're witnessing an unfolding, you know, of consciousness, and it's kind of just being where we are and accepting it, and continuing on our individual journeys to keep giving ourselves what we need, so that we're able to show up in these kind of spaces and have that intention that you know, and have our intentions and allow life to sort of unfold in alignment with that. You know, that's kind of how I see it.
Well, I'll go a little deeper with you guys. I mean, my secret is that I haven't trusted men, period. I haven't had, you guys are the first group of men that I can quote unquote say trust. You know, you men are the first group of men that has my authenticity, right? My example of what a man should be wasn't a good example, right? I knew intuitively as a little boy, it's like, no, this is wrong. And haphazardly looking at other men through media, through, you know, and I couldn't find any. Right? Other than the religious, you know, Yeshua, you know, other than the gurus, Sai Baba, Paramahansa, you know, it seemed like to be a virtuous man, you had to be extraordinary, right? You had to go through this path that you were born of divine essence. And it's like, I went within. I wasn't part of reality. I wasn't part of this construct. I allowed this to just go by me. And for me, there was a point in time in my life that I just said, enough is enough. I don't care what the pain is. I don't care what my cognitive and ego mind tells me as far as what I'm witnessing. I will leave and surrender my heart completely open to what this experience is. And yes, there were painful experiences, and I learned from them. And yes, there were incredibly joyous experiences at the same time. So all I know is that when I made the decision to fully embody and experience this life, it's like what Akana said, I'm writing the greatest love story that I've ever written. And that made so much, that to me really spoke to me. So I will continue moving on this path. And as much as, you know, I still get these little voices when I'm amongst men and be like, oh, you know, these things come in, I just surrender to it and allow it to be, because that's the experience.
there was a sentence in there that we missed.
Okay.
It was the beginning of that last paragraph.
Yeah, I don't remember now. I was really,
Okay.
really in the moment. So, yeah. Yeah, I think collectively what my perspective is there are a lot of men that have a mistrust of other men or can only go to a certain level with men, right? Well, because of programming, right? And from what I witnessed here, I saw Bradley over the summertime and had this incredible immersive experience with Bradley. You know, I have the brothers here, Brian and Terrence, and James as well, that we connect from time to time. It's incredibly immersive, and I think we as men need to let go of whatever that story is in our head, and dive into that deeper experience and holding each other in that deeper experience, because that's where our healing is.
But it also takes a safe environment to do so, and other men willing to hold space for that, because that's part of the trauma itself, is coming up into an environment that it didn't hold space for that. And so we as men learn to shut down our emotions and our feelings and withdraw and just keep things within, and learn to be strong and learn to be that place that stone heart, that can't be moved, because we had to be strong for everybody else. For me, it was like I had a stepfather with multiple sclerosis. I had a brother who's mentally handicapped, and I had a mom who was bipolar, and she had some other issues there too. But so I had to be the only normal one, which means I had to be strong for everybody else in the household, and I didn't really have a safe space to open up to, right? And so when I tried, and sometimes it was okay, and sometimes it was like this. I learned that the environment itself wasn't exactly the safest for me at times, and I tried to express my truth at times, and it just didn't get heard. I was not believed, right? And so through that, I was just like, I learned to keep things to myself, and I had a group of friends, that I could share some things with, but even then, you could feel the transmission of the same ideals through your friends too, right? So they're kind of in a similar concept. And then getting in the military, there's not that kind of group in the military, of course, not that I experienced. So afterwards, I still have some good friends. I still have some good friends from there, but and there's been some deep shares, but it's not on the consistent and completely open level that I experience here. And so coming into this place with you, all of you guys, is a place that everybody's open and holding space and wanting the same thing, wanting that authentic share, wanting to be fully expressing themselves and be open and being the best version of themselves as the divine masculine. So that intention setting forth, I think it does make all the difference. And part of that, too, is like you can construct that reality for yourself. So if you don't have that reality, you can construct that reality. You can go into your mind space and start to envision yourself somewhere where it is safe to do so, where you have community, where you have your brotherhood, where you have a place that's safe to share and open up fully, and you're supported in that. And I know, speaking for myself, that I envisioned this group in the way that we operate together well before I stepped into this space, well before. So this for me is that manifestation.
Bradley, you were doing the same thing, were you not?
Yeah, I was actually. I was looking to create something along this line, and yeah, just out of the blue, you got in touch with me, Jesus. It was completely aligned with exactly the values that I had in mind, and everything that you said was just a complete yes. Like, just everything you said was completely lined up with what I'd been calling in. So yeah, for sure, completely.
And that was, for me, every single day, being authentic is challenging, right? And because I still have this resistance from time to time on, my monkey mind on, what are they going to judge me on? Right? This, like, being here right now, as everyone's watching, is a big step for me. It had been. That's why, the creation of this Divine Masculine Roundtable is to really create a template for other men to bind together, share together, hold space for each other. The other part of that, Brendan, too, which I also I'm cognizant is men don't know how to hold space for each other. There's an awkwardness associated with it, or when the deep stuff. What I've noticed as well is when the deep stuff comes out, depending on where you are and in your wholeness, there's a level of discomfort and there's a level of discontent or disconnection as well, right? So that's part of the other issue, in that holding space needs to be really a high integrity. And communication. Communication is really, for me, communication is super important. And really authentically and gently speaking your truth while holding space for each other.
Absolutely. We're about halfway through. There's one other thing that I kind of wanted to bring up before I start going into the guided meditation part. And that was like the concept of what manifests reality. And a little bit to kind of go into that is thinking about, like, I'm sure you guys probably have all heard of Wim Hof, the Iceman, and some of his experiments that he's done under scientific scrutiny. And when he was in, like, for one of them, he was infected with this bacterial infection that causes violent illness for 24 to 48 hours. And he was able to fight this off within his body with an injection in 2 hours. And he didn't experience any of the illness, any of the symptoms that's typically associated with that. And he did that by going through in his breath and breathing a certain way. And having gone through this method that he does myself, it stops all of the function of the mind. It's like it blocks everything off, and then it opens up the space. And as it opens up the space, then he can stop, and then he concentrates in his slow breath on, it's basically a way of being present with whatever's going on and kind of breathe through it and being completely tuned into his own self-awareness. And what they found is, like, his body produced more, it goes into apoptosis, and so it on command, and so it produces more of a certain kind of thing in the body, like these it's not typical for the body to produce those things. So the body itself, there was another study, I was trying to remember it, it kind of escapes me right now, but it was another experience of somebody else being studied and found that they could produce a certain vitamin in the body when they wanted to. And then there's, like, Seth, hey, how's it going? Welcome. Good to have you here.
Welcome, brother.
Yeah, there was another guy who has been studied under scrutiny, and he can focus on atoms, molecules, and he will change the atomic structure of something that he's looking at. He will change the atomic weight of these things that he's looking at, and it's been studied. And then thinking about, like, my own experiences where you're shifting realities. I've seen, like, walls appear and disappear. So that's a whole physical structure appearing into that own space, into that space that didn't appear before. And you can And I was feeling also the thoughts of my friend that was standing next to me affecting the reality of the wall that I was witnessing before me. She was saying this wall wasn't supposed to be there, and it started wobbling. I could feel the thought form wobbling and causing the wall itself to waver back and forth. And then it disappeared because she kept holding on to that thought and projecting it towards the wall. And I'm just sitting there open to whatever's happening and witnessing it. And then we have other experiences like Dan Winters, where he was showing that you can create all different kinds of elements when things are under pressure. Things are under pressure and heat. Elements that weren't previously there appear suddenly in the reading. They had nothing that you could just take soil and put it in this and test it, and suddenly there's gold, there's palladium, there's all these different kinds of precious metals that appear, and other elements appear out of thin air that weren't there previously. So you know that there's all different kinds of ways and things that we can think about to manifest something into space, manifest it into your reality. And this is a concept that you can see like some of these yogic masters where they'll apportation, they'll have something manifest in the air before them and they'll offer it to you. You know, it's like, it's not a magic trick. There's magicians who do that. There's illusionists who do that. But there's also something more to that. And I've had friends also who, under the influence of ethnobotanicals, who had lost something, and they've looked everywhere, all around them. And I know what some people might say about this. It's just a trick of the mind, but there's plenty of other instances I can refer to also, where suddenly they're like, no, it's here. And they reached down and they found their keys that they had missed. They know, they swept the area all around, and it wasn't there before, but it was this alignment with it being right there that suddenly it's right there. There's other instances where my stepsister, she said she set her glasses down on the desk, and her house has spirits in it. You know, they come and read her books that's left on the table, and they'll leave. And she's like, okay, she just knows what's going on. It doesn't bother her. But sometimes they'll take stuff, it like kind of mess with her a little bit. So she set down her sunglasses on this dresser, and then she went back and looked, and they were gone. And then she yelled out, okay, you can put it back now. And then she left the room and came back, and it was there again. And so it's this funny little occurrence that happens. And there's all kinds of these stories, all kinds of these stories. But when you take all these stories together, what does that mean for ourselves? And how do you use that to create the body and the health that you desire? If your body is missing nutrients, can you create those nutrients in the body? If your body has too much of something, can you balance and harmonize the body through that realization? And it seems to be that this is where your aligned intentions come into play. When you have your aligned intentions and trust that your energy and your alignment to Creator is what's going to manifest in your life, then you can release the idea of any resistance to it actually occurring in the body, and use these concepts to see it as true and feel it as true, and feel the shift in the body as you're feeling into the things the body needs, and going into that subtle awareness. Your body is going to tell you the things it needs, to show you the things it needs. You're going to feel it's asking, and then you can respond by feeling it's receiving. So, any other chiming in? Because I was just telling Seth, I was just telling everybody I was going to lead with that, and then go into the meditation and kind of do the group exercise.
Well, a lot of what you said in that, and the continuation of is healing is slowing down and really unfolding into the perfection. Right? We're always moving. We're always doing something, and There's nothing to be done. Everything's perfect.
I'll say the topic, of course, there's no coincidences. Everything's always perfectly lined. But for me to come on late like this and hear you guys talking about this topic in particular, which is exactly the reason why I've been late, which is why the circumstances of my life have been what they've been. I just feel like what I've been experiencing lately is so in alignment, like to a T with what you've shared, that I'd have to share it because it'll certainly contribute to this communication that we're exchanging, that we're having here. And, you know, Akana knows what I'm going through, not what's happening within the circumference of what my reality appears to be, you could say. And a dear friend he has a brain tumor. It's massive. And he's been fighting it, doing everything that he can, was in the hospital. They tried to deal with it. They got to the point where, he was no longer conscious. He went out of consciousness, brought him home. You know, everybody's like praying. I did a thing on Facebook, like asking for prayers, asking for help. And, you know, everybody's helping in all these different ways. And then Akana was helping tremendously, and all this stuff was going on, and we're seeing some improvement. And then I just was like, you know what? I'm not Seth, right? I am whatever is causing this heart to beat. That's what I am. There's nothing else but that. And I made it really, really clear that that's all there was. And I just allowed that to be. And all of the past conditioning, all the belief systems, all the things that have happened previous were gone. They just weren't there because the intention and willingness to be aligned with what truly is within me was so strong that I was like, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to be that. That's all there is. There wasn't even anything. It was just, this is all there is. And in that space, I was in this flow where I could feel between my physical body and my energy body, where I could move in a certain way. And I just began to touch the field. And every time that I would touch it, his field, I could put this like proliferation of chemicals, of like energy that translated to energy, to feeling. And I could feel it in me, and I knew he could feel it in him. And he's in a coma at this point, you know, like ready to die. And so I'm doing this and just going for it. And all, you know, like I could tell something miraculous happened. But I went home. The next morning they call me up. They're like, you gotta come over here. And he's wide awake. He's conscious. They're like, you know, everyone's like, what happened? And I was like, it's not me. We were all part of it. We all did it. And tried to explain. I was like, suspend all belief and disbelief, all of it. There's no like, and same thing. I worked on it for 4 more hours. And this time I was being guided by others that were there energetically, that were helping to instruct how these other people that were present can also work on him. And so they're there, they're working on him, they're doing the work, and they're doing it, and everything's happening. And so I'm going over there every day, just doing this, giving hours. But I'm feeling in myself, I'm like, ooh, okay, you know when it's you, you know when it's being done through you, and then you also know when it's you, right? So the ego, who I think I am, started to get involved in it a little bit, you know, because it's like, whoa, okay, I'm doing something that's having a tremendous effect on somebody. And I'm a humble person, you know, but there's even at these levels, like I'm feeling how careful I've got to be, and it's coming on as like, okay, I'm tiring myself out. I'm becoming tired. It's hurting me by giving so much, by being in this space, but he's responding so well. He's coming to. So I'm not listening to my body. You know, my body's literally telling me like, okay, enough for the day, go home, rest, chill out. But I'm not listening. I'm just standing there, you know, doing all the things. I'm like weaving, I'm breaking up the fabric that is keeping his emotional stuff stagnant. And then I'm weaving it all back together. And I'm in a state of like, wow, this has never happened before, you know, and this is going on. And then I go home and all of a sudden I get really sick, you know, and I'm like, all right, I went to sleep, but I couldn't sleep. I was up all night. I was in a tremendous amount of pain. Next morning, I talked to a few people. They're like, it sounds like your appendix ruptured. You need to go to the hospital, you know, like everyone around is like, go to the hospital. You have to, and I'm like, no way. And they're like, if your appendix ruptured, you're going to die and all this. And so I'm researching, I'm looking up, and I definitely had all the symptoms of that. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, no, okay, if I just help this dear brother come out of a coma and become present, I can do this on myself. And so I spent days just doing all this work, and you know, I repaired it. I made it better. I got better, you know, but it took a lot. It was a lot. It was a tremendous amount. And while I wasn't working on him, because I hadn't been over at his place, he went back into a coma again. And they're all like, you need to come back, like, please. And I'm like, you know, feeling this like tug, this pull and give of like confusion and awe and excitement and sadness and all this stuff at once, and just being like, time to slow down, time to stop ascribing human meaning that is mostly the result of the way I've perceived things in the past. Time to just allow this to be exactly what it is and not have any expectation or attachment or anything. So I know it's a long thing, but this is what I've been going through. This is what's been happening lately. And so for me to tune in and hear Brandon talking about that with the energy, like I'm in shock. I don't know. I know parts of myself now that I never knew 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, this whole integration of everything that's happening is like, you know, so I had to I felt like it was timely to share that with everything that you were saying. And we are. And the beautiful thing about it, I'll just say this and I'll stop, is that like, this is in everybody. Every single human being alive is capable of getting beyond who they think they are and allowing these organs that are these glands that are inside of us that are mostly producing hormones of stress have the ability to produce feel-good chemicals that then turn into feelings that feel incredible. And the willingness to do that unremittingly throughout your entire body is self-love. And I've been doing that nonstop, just loving myself, getting all these glands and organs in me to put these chemicals of self-love and energy all through my body. And in turn, my field is lighting up. And it's drawing from a field that's way bigger than the field that's normally just beating my heart. And so I'm becoming conscious of all of this as it's happening. And I'm just like it's these steps and everything. And I'm like, everybody can do this, because the people that were with me, like, they were being instructed how to do it. And they were like, oh my God, we're doing it too. And it's like, so I'm thinking like, you know, okay, yeah, I took it too far. I got sick and I got set back, but it's like, here we are at the precipice of something where we as a species have this opportunity to perceive reality beyond just the normal five senses that most of us perceive reality from, and activate these dormant perceptual energy centers that are in all of us. And what does that mean for us as a species? It means that we're governing ourselves in alignment with nature as it really is. And if enough of us are doing that independently, together, that's change, you know? That's how we love our life. That's how we love this world. That's how we evolve. Anyway.
Oh, Seth. That was beautifully said.
Thank you.
I would also add, Seth, the more of us do that allows us, we upload this into the morphogenic field. And and allows us to then get greater access to what's required. That's really the technology. We are the technology.
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.